I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Hello there, welcome to today's episode. Today I have Maude MacDonald of the Retro Quilter. She's the gorgeous face behind all those gorgeous designs. She's also the host of the new podcast, Thread and Therapy. So if you haven't heard that already, go check it out. She designs modern patterns with a retro feel, and good grief, are they cute. So here we are with Maude. Thank you so much for joining me today, Maude. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am great. Thanks for asking.
Mhm.
Oh man. So I was kind of talking about this. I interviewed Susie of Susie Quilts recently, and I was telling her, like, I kind of fangirl behind the scenes for a while, and then I'm like, okay, I just need to be brave and ask this person to talk to me. And that's how I was with you too. So I was just kind of like behind the scenes watching you, and I'm just like, which sounds creepy, but so I'm just very excited that you're here today.
Well, thank you so much. And also thank you for the comparison to Susie, because really? Because I don't know if I could be that brave. So good on you.
Well, thanks. Yeah. And I just love your stuff. It stands out. It's so striking. And I think like that's what catches my eye and hopefully other people's eye too, right? Like that's the point, is to stand out and make a mark in the quilting community, which you have. So that's amazing. But
Thank
um
you.
yeah. So I want to go back to, where you started. How did you get into quilting and all of that?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So the very first quilt that I made was for my dad. It was Christmas time, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I need a gift. And I had worked with t-shirts before. So I thought, how hard could it be to make a t-shirt quilt, right? Well, the answer is pretty hard,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially if it's like your first quilt too, right?
hmm hmm
Um, but really, I loved s- seeing it build and kind of come together and everything. So that's how it started. And then it was like, oh, well, my stepmom needs a quilt. And then by then my mom was like, okay, here's a pattern. You're making me this. And then it was like, who else needs a quilt? Who's having a baby? Who can I make a quilt for? And
Right.
kept going, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, it's like you almost start to look for excuses to keep making quilts once you get into it because you're like, well, I can't make them all for myself.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
you can. I give everyone in the world permission to make as many quilts for themselves as they want. It does not have to be for anybody else.
Yeah. But it was definitely like, I'd see fabric and I'd be like, oh, I want to use that, or see a pattern. I'm like, okay. And justify, for me, it was more like justifying the spending for
hmm
it. So I was like, if I was to give this to somebody, then it would be a gift and it would be fine.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's how I approached it at first, for sure.
Yeah. So how long has it been then since you started? How many?
So that first quilt was Christmas of 2018. And so basically from 2019 till now. So what's that? I can't do math right now.
eh,
5 years?
Yeah.
5 years. Um, and prior to that, I I had only started sewing in 2017. So
Okay.
it's yeah, that was 2017 was like the first time I threaded a sewing machine.
Wow. Yeah. That's fast for you though. Like you came into it really quickly and then you started the retro quilter in 2019. Is that right?
No, that kind of evolved.
Okay.
So initially I was made by Maude,
Okay.
and I don't know. I think it takes some time for a lot of people to sort of realize what area of quilting speaks to you, what
hmm
fabrics speaks to you, all of the things. Um, so I really just dove in head first. Like, let's try applique, let's try FPP, let's try all this stuff.
hmm
only to realize like maybe I should just try the basics first
Right.
and get pretty good at that. Uh,
Yeah.
it took a little bit before I sort of became the retro quilter, and that was just sort of because I was looking like, I don't know if you can see. Oh, you can see a little bit of
I
my
can see.
retro-y curtains.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
Thank you. But like my home is retro. I've always liked retro stuff.
Hmm.
And so it was inevitable that I was going to be looking for retro style patterns. And when I found some, which there weren't many, they were at such a like a higher skill level
Mm.
than I was at, that I was like, I can't, these are lovely,
Hmm.
but I can't do that. So then I was like, oh, there's a hole. Right.
Idea.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
then that was sort of like it all kind of came together and overlapped of like becoming the retro quilter and like
Hmm.
starting to make patterns and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool. And like building your lifestyle into your business instead of your business deciding what your lifestyle is, like, I think can be a tricky part for some people, especially like women entrepreneurs. I think we feel like our identity has to be our business.
Mm-hmm.
At least
Yeah.
that's what I'm coming across. And it was hard for me. It's like everything I do, like, every job I've done, I'm like, that's my personality.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to go, I think, the other way around when people are trying to figure out, like, oh, how can I figure out a niche? How can I figure out a style?
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like if you're doing that, there's some sort of element of people pleasing to that. Whereas if it's just coming from you, then it's organic.
Hmm.
And if it's from you, then, those are the things that you love and are probably not going to get tired of too.
Yeah.
Right. And this,
Yeah.
I mean, retro just happens to be that for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, I love that. I think that people pleasing aspect is something I'm working on personally. It can be really hard because you want to please the most amount of people because you're like, well, if my
Mm-hmm.
business doesn't reach, millions of people, it's not going to be successful. But I think when you do niche in, that's when you find your crowd. That's when you find the people
Yeah.
that you're going to resonate with and they're going to resonate with you. And it's
But
you.
yeah, and that it makes so much sense too, right? Because if you're like, okay, I don't know, I like all the HSTs and I like Minky, and that's going to be my thing. And if
Hmm.
that's what makes you happy and you're like, I'm going to be so excited about that, people pick up on that excitement and that genuine authenticness that you're bringing and putting out there. And so you naturally attract those people that like the HSTs and like the Minky, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just as an example. But like if you're like, well, I'm going to do this because I think it's going to be good, you're just not going to have that authenticity.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but it gets tricky because yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. You're like, well, how can I do this? And like, yeah, I
Hmm.
know. My mind's always running a mile a minute like that.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, this other podcast is doing this thing. I need to do that too. And then I'm like, who am I kidding? Like, I'm
Yeah.
I can't do it. Or like, oh no, this other long arming business does this thing. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to stick to what my long arming business does. And I'm going to focus on what I'm good at and
Yes.
just hang,
Yes.
hang on to those things. Cause again, yeah, it's like a lot of pressure to do all the things and have, you know, pokers and all the different fires. But it's like the level of burnout when you do that is so crazy. Like, why would you force yourself out of the thing you love by trying to keep up with the Joneses kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's a slippery slope once you kind of get on it. And so having to be mindful of that is really, really good thing to have in the forefront. But it seems like you've done a great job at that. I mean, all of your stuff vibes together. It has a very cohesive feel. And it like, I've never seen anything from you that feels like, oh, that doesn't really feel like Maude. Like, I wonder what she's doing. Nothing's
Mm-hmm.
peaked at least from what I've seen in that way, made me go, is she okay?
Yeah. Well, and I feel like because if you have a niche, it helps in that aspect too.
Mhm.
Right. So if I look at a design and I go and the first thoughts that comes to my mind is like, oh, that's really farmhouse. Well, then I know that that's not it because that's not my niche. Right. So
Yeah.
it can really work for you too, niching down, but like it can obviously be really scary if you're thinking of it as, oh, well, I'm not going to be this big umbrella. Well, no, you're not, but you're going to have your people under your umbrella, right? Like
Mhm.
that's what you want. So,
Yeah.
um, even right now, I'm working on a quilt that is it's OG Ruby Star. Okay.
Oh, I love.
Right? Who doesn't?
Oh my God, I'm
Right.
obsessed.
It's OG. Probably, yeah, 2019. And so I have all these things, all these fat quarters, and I started putting it together. And I'm like, I love these prints, but they're not my typical, warm colors. And like there's some blues and some blacks. And I'm even a little nervous about posting some pictures of it
Really?
because it's just not my color palette.
Mhm.
So I'm sure I'll post some stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah. And I think too, like, even if you are niched in, it's okay to try new things, like, because we don't grow unless we try new stuff, right? Like, we can niche in, but then if we just stay in that lane and don't ever try to see how anything else can fit into that niche, like,
Mhm.
I think that is another slippery slope. It's like you don't want to trap yourself in this like super narrow like valley that you're now stuck in, but like, yeah, how do you stay true to yourself and then also incorporate new things that you're learning or learning to love? Or yeah,
Yeah.
that can be a hard balance, but
Oh yeah. And the only way to do it is really just try and
mhm,
go for it.
yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think even, if it's not your color palette, you can just say like, I'm just trying something new and seeing how this fits with my aesthetic. And because you are genuine to who you are and to your brand, like people I think can accept that and will be willing to entertain it because it's fun to see people try new things. It's fun to see like, oh, what's she doing now? Like,
Yeah.
and if it still feels like you, then those new things can easily be incorporated, I think. Like, I don't know.
Well, plus their OG Ruby Star fat quarters, they had to get used.
Yeah, yeah, you can't
it,
just let them sit in a closet.
it was time, right? Like,
Yeah, I know. I was part of, well, not part of, I just had subscribed to Fat Quarter Shop. Used to do like oh my gosh, I just blanked on what it's called. Like a fat quarter booster. So
okay.
every quarter, every 3 months, they would send you a new set of 12 fat quarters and a coordinating thread and a pattern.
Nice.
It was really cool, but it was
Hmm.
so overwhelming because was I making the quilts? No. But it was like cotton and steel and like Ruby Star. Like, so there's a ton of OG Ruby Star in there when they were still with cotton and steel. And so I have like all these bundles, and it's
Hmm.
like I am terrified to do anything with them because I don't want to ruin them. But it's
That's the thing and that's why they sit, right?
yeah.
And then at some point you got to go, what is it doing
Hmm.
sitting here? Like, you
Yeah.
know, I'm like that too, because if I am not when I collect fabric, I don't collect a lot of fabric. I buy what I need
Mm.
typically. Um, with the exception of vintage sheets.
Oh yeah.
Like I have like a whole, I don't know, it's not an armoire, but a cabinet of sorts. And it's
Hmm.
just full to the brim of vintage sheets and vintage fabrics. And every once in a while, I just like to look at them,
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, they're just sitting in this cabinet. Like, come on. So, yeah, I was just at QuiltCon
Mm.
in February, and working up to that. And like, I don't know why it's some unwritten rule or something that everybody's got to make something to wear at
Right.
QuiltCon. But I was like, I got that buzz and I was like, oh, I'm going to make something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to make something out of my vintage sheets. And I did. I had, again, no idea what I was doing, but I did it anyway. And you know what? I love it. I made myself, I don't know what you call it, a calf can. I think that's what it's called.
Oh, a caftan? Like a,
Yeah.
it's
That's
like a folded, you like fold a sheet over you essentially with armholes and a waist
yeah,
tie.
and it's
Yeah.
kind of got like a little like
A little waist cinch.
waist and yes,
Mhm.
perfect. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna do it. And some of it's fallen apart after the first wash, not gonna lie, but it lasted.
Yeah.
It was fun. And I used my fabric and I
Yeah.
enjoyed my outfit and people enjoyed it and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
just use the fabric,
Yeah. Yeah.
just use it. But I feel you. It's like there's pressure in
Mhm.
what that project is going to be with those beloved fabrics, right?
Yeah.
Get it. Yeah.
Because you're like, you don't want to waste it and hate the thing because you're like, I just made it to make something, but then it's like nothing's good enough. So
Mhm.
I don't
But
know.
I bet you would love any quilt and see those fabrics
Yeah.
used. Even if you did hate it, you would love seeing those fabrics
Yeah.
more than, you know,
Yeah.
in your closet or whatever.
Yeah. That's for sure. Like,
There's my PSA for today.
yeah. Get in your closet, make your quilts.
Right? Yeah, use the fabric.
Yeah. I I made a caftan too.
Mhm.
I didn't go to QuiltCon, but I had bought some just I think it was like 5 yards of a ruby star. It was one of the I don't know the name of the print, but it's one of the big florals from the um Cam, is it
Mela?
Camilla line?
Yep.
And um I didn't have a plan for it. I didn't have a quilt for it. It was just super, super on sale and I just wanted it. And so I was like, I'm gonna make a caftan. And so I followed the tutorial that Katerina Rochella has on her blog
Mhm.
and just made one. And I used the selvage as the waist tie. And
Nice.
so it's like I made the neck way too big. So I'm like, I don't know how to wear this now. So I might need to do some alterations, but I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this fabric. And instead of letting it sit in a pile, I made something, but then now I like can't wear the thing. So I'm like, I just defeated the purpose of whatever I just did. So
But you can figure it out.
I
And
can.
if worse comes to worse, you can cut it all up and make it into a quilt.
Exactly. I'm like, well, it's not so bad. There's lots of ways to repurpose this, but I think,
Yeah.
yeah, like my mom, she has sewn like her entire life and she started with like garments and just like household kind of things. And so I know she could help me figure it out, but it's just one of those things where I'm like, oh, did I just like waste my time?
Yeah. I feel that because I'm also like, when I do it, I never want to go back.
Mm,
Right. I
mhm.
never want to backtrack. Um,
Yeah. I'm like, it's done. I can't do anything about it.
yeah, I totally feel that. But I think you should do it and get it ready because it's like springtime,
I know. And that was the
right?
other thing is like I made it in the fall. So then it was kind of like already past. I couldn't wear it as like a swim cover because it was getting really cold. And yeah, so it just like was weird timing. And so I think, yeah, now that it's gonna get warmer, hopefully I woke up to 3 inches of snow yesterday. So I don't know
Mm-hmm.
about the warm weather coming anytime soon, but I do want it ready for like there's a little like public swimming pond and like near the river by my house that my friends and I like to go to. So I'd like to have it for at
Yes.
least something like
Yes,
there.
that and a big hat.
Yes. Yeah. I have a
Right?
hat, but I want a bigger one. So I'm like on
Yes.
the hunt now. Yeah. So
The mother of all hats.
yeah. I'm like, I really want that for my life. I just want to be obnoxious on that beach.
Oh my gosh, please, with the biggest sunglasses ever too, and like post it all over Instagram because I need to see that outfit.
You know I will.
Yes.
Yeah. I
We'll start a caftan club.
yes.
Like
Yeah. I do want to get more like a different fabric and try it again with like a flowier fabric because definitely quilting cotton is probably not the smartest, but a sheet makes sense because they're lighter and especially vintage sheets like a little bit less dense, I guess, is
yeah.
quilting cotton would be. But I want to see your caftan. What the heck?
Um, no, I don't know if I have pictures, but they're all like QuiltCon pictures of like
Hmm.
me with people and stuff. I put like a recap of sorts,
Mm.
my highlights. But I made it out of a Wabasso vintage sheet. So like the real flower power type things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was actually a thicker cotton
Okay.
and it was all cotton, whereas most sheets, vintage sheets are typically like a 50% polyester and 50% cotton. This is
Hmm.
100% cotton. So for the time that I was there, it was in Atlanta. It was
Hmm.
just the perfect weight. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. And
That's good.
it wasn't see-through.
That's like, what kind of sheet did you use?
Yeah.
Was this like a toga situation or?
At times when I was working on it, it felt like it was going in that direction, but it worked out. I had
That's
to
good.
MacGyver it a little bit, but
You
so
know,
yeah.
that's, but now it's like you have pictures, you've got memories, and that's like such a fun thing. I just think even if it didn't turn out exactly how you wanted it to, it's like now there's something
Yeah,
like frozen
exactly.
in time that you get to look back and say, oh yeah, I whipped that little thing together and felt good about it. And that's fun. I know. Or my mom and I are gonna go, I guess technically no, next year now. Um,
Hmm.
my little brother's getting married at the end of April. So we were just kind of like, we need to not be gone. And yeah, anyway, so we're gonna go next year, but we're working on pulling together stuff to make quilt coats. And so that I think that will be our QuiltCon make.
Nice.
And
Nice.
yeah, Lonnie, I don't do you know Lonnie from Having So Much Fun?
No.
Lonnie's, oh gosh, she just makes all the clothing in the whole wide world and she's hilarious. But she has me convinced to make pants. And so when I was telling my mom, she's like, I want to make pants. And so I'm like, maybe we'll just make like a whole outfit and then that's what we'll wear the whole time.
Yes. Why not?
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know.
Try it out.
Yeah,
Right?
maybe. We'll see. We'll see how far I get. I always pretend I'm gonna do all these projects like I have time to sew for myself, but here we are. I have like a list piling up of things I want to do.
Is that not like, I don't know, the creative or like the quilter way though?
Hmm.
I mean, I especially coming back from QuiltCon and I was just so inspired. So QuiltCon for me was actually my very first quilt show. It was my
Mm.
first QuiltCon, all the things. So the only times I had seen quilts in person was at my guild meetings before.
Mhm.
So to go to this, it was so overwhelming in all the best ways, but it was so inspiring. So when I got back, I was like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I still have that list going,
Mhm.
but I haven't really made a dent in it. It just keeps growing.
Yeah. It's like I make one little thing and then I add five more in the meantime. Like,
Yeah.
ugh. But
Yeah.
I think that's the coolest part about all of this, like QuiltCon or even just like being parts of communities online is you get to see so many cool projects and
Mhm.
like the brainchild of like really creative people. And it's like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought to like make that, or I never would have thought to modify that thing in that way to make it more functional. Or it's just, there's just so much inspiration out
Oh
there that
yeah.
your list could be endless really if you
Yeah.
weren't
I mean,
careful.
even seeing the makes of my patterns,
Hmm.
and I never get tired of seeing how people interpret it or what fabrics people have used.
Hmm.
Because 9 out of 10 times I'm like, I would have never thought of that. And look at this. It's just incredible, right? It's
Yeah.
always, I don't know, it's incredible. It's incredible to see. And there's so much talent out there too. So
Yeah.
mhm.
Some people I'm just like, I don't even know how you do that. Like
I know.
I wouldn't have the patience, but good for you. And yeah, it's just amazing to see all that. And wow. Yeah. And I can't even imagine like seeing your own pattern just iterated over and over in so many different perspectives and like meeting other people's aesthetics and just like how different that can be.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. So like my last pattern is Pop and Posies. And I'm so excited because there's a quilt along that's going to be coming up soon.
Ooh.
So I know that I'm going to be seeing a lot more, but the very first like make in the wild or whatever,
Hmm.
was by Kristen of Mustard Cotton Co., I believe.
Mm.
And she did these, like, it was black and white and like a beige. So that's
Oh,
so opposite of me.
yeah.
I'm like, give me all the color.
Yeah.
And here it's all neutrals and it is so striking and
Wow.
beautiful. Like it just stops me dead in my tracks when I saw it, and I'm just like, I love that. Like I would have never thought to do that. And it's
Yeah.
just amazing.
Oh, that's so fun. I just I've loved like being part of test groups and just it's kind of the same thing. Like we're all working on the same thing, but everybody's turns out so different and
Mhm.
so unique that you're like, oh my gosh, I never would have envisioned the quilt that way.
Yeah.
And then it's like, now I'm jealous. I wish mine looked like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah, for sure.
it's so fun. So when did you release your first pattern?
Uh, February of last year.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was, oh, pardon me, that was Boogie Nights, and I had taken the Quilter's Handy Pattern Writing course, and that's where I started developing Boogie Nights.
Hmm.
And it was funny because like around all that time, it's like, hey, I'm going to be the retro quilter, and retro kind of means curves, and I'm going to make this pattern. But I had not really done curves. I was like, I'm just
Mm.
going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And now it's like curves is like my thing now. So
I
it's
was gonna
just kind
say,
of,
like, all your patterns have curves, so you obviously figured it
yeah,
out.
yeah, right. So it's just funny how things go sometimes. But
Yeah. Is
yeah,
it
it was
hard
just
to
last year.
that's
Sorry.
no, you're fine. Like, that's like so fast because you have several patterns out. And so does it feel like it's coming naturally? Do you feel like you're forcing yourself at any point? Or do you just like feel like you've now found like an avenue to let all your creativity out?
All of the above. All of the above there. Yeah. Uh, I I'm much more of a designer when it comes to quilt patterns. I much prefer that as opposed to writing the pattern.
Sure.
However, I can get in modes where I'm like, hey, I'm going to write this pattern and just sort of like punch it out. And I get really into that groove.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, sometimes it's forced. So coincidentally, I had heard a podcast. It was like maybe even like the first or second episode of the Craft to Career podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And Susie Quilts was the guest,
Oh,
actually. And she had made mention that she does like all of her designing at the beginning of the year or the end of the year. And she just puts four together, and then she knows that that's how she's going to plan her year quarterly. And I was like, that is brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. So last year I kind of was flying by the seat of my pants and figuring it all out as I went. And so this year I was like, hey, I need to do some planning. I need to, figure some stuff out. And I thought, I'm going to do what Susie Quilts does. If that works for her, like I'm going to do it. And I tried,
Mm-hmm.
and the plan has changed a few times already. So I came out with Pop and Posies. That wasn't supposed to happen. It was going to be this other quilt that I was like, I've got this idea, and I came up with
Yeah.
it. I have another pattern written for June-ish. And then I've got this other design that I'm in love with,
Mm-hmm.
but writing the pattern feels very forced right now.
Mm.
So I have to kind of like, I don't know, I love it, but I just can't force myself to get in that mode just yet. So it's all of the things.
Yeah.
And, I just kind of have to recognize what I'm doing and also like balance that with the priorities of what I need to get done. Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's probably hard, like when you're riding the wave of like a new release and like everybody's excitement for it, to then sit down and like focus on something else. I would be
Mhm.
like, no,
Yeah.
this is not how this is going to go.
I don't understand how people like even like fabric designers or something,
Yeah.
they're doing Christmas designs
Mhm.
right now. And I'm like, ugh,
I know.
that kind of thing. But I mean, that's how it goes, right?
Yeah. Well, and I guess like I didn't really have a concept of like what the process was like until I interviewed Katerina, and she was like one of the very first interviews,
Mm-hmm.
and just talking to her about designing fabrics, because she has over 20 lines of fabric now. And I'm just like, how the heck? And we were talking about the one that she was just getting ready to release. And she's like, oh, yeah, this next one is coming. I'm like, you already have another one? Like, what? She's like, yeah. And then the one after that. I'm like, Jesus, what? Like, it just didn't even, like, I guess I just didn't really have the concept of like, no, they're always like working on the next one, like
Yeah.
to come out. And so even though people are still like energetic about their latest release, they've got one already in the works that's going to come out, and then that's going to be the new thing. And then I'm just like, oh my God, I don't even
Yeah.
know.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. And so like in that regard, I feel like, yeah, you always have to be working and you have to have a little bit of foresight too, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I do like the concept of trying to like do it kind of in batches so that you can slowly work on releasing them throughout the rest of the year. But like you, if the inspiration's not there to work on the thing, it's really hard. Like I struggle with the same thing. It's really hard to make myself work on something that I just am not feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I
So,
love the design. I'm hoping that, I don't know, that motivation will come.
yeah.
Um, but right now I'm just like, I like what I'm doing. I'm still enjoying Pop and Posies, and I just want to make like 15 of them. So
Right?
that's what's
Yeah.
happening.
Oh.
Right.
Well, and with
Yeah.
the quilt along coming up, like that's probably taking a lot of focus. And have you done a quilt along before, or is this going to be your first one?
I did one last year. So last year, my retro daisy pattern came out in May. And that I think that was the pattern that kind of propelled me. And so I was like, hey, I'm just gonna do a quilt along. Again, had no idea what I was doing, but
Yeah.
you just kind of do it anyway.
Hmm.
And it was a lot of fun. And so for Pop and Posies, like I knew this year I wanted to do another quilt along.
Hmm.
I wasn't exactly sure what one it was going to be for, but Pop and Posies, it's had a lot of momentum. So I was like, okay, let's do it again. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I incorporate Zoom meetings once a week so that we can just like, if somebody has a problem or something, we can chat about it. But
Hmm.
also it's fun. It's kind of like show and tell, and
Yeah.
we get to hang out and chat and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So there's, I like the community part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so fun. And like community is huge. And I think, you know, those of us in the quilting community, I think sometimes we don't always have like a local group that we can join. And so
Mhm.
the option of being able to do these things online or like over Zoom is like a lifesaver. And like it's so meaningful for so many people. And so I love seeing like people adding more and more stuff to their, what they're offering of ways to connect to their
Yeah.
fans or their followers or people that just want to be a part of their community. And I always say if you let your, be your authentic self and let your weird out, like the other weirdos like you are going to find you. And like that's where you build your community. And we just have a bigger platform to be able to do that now. So it's really cool.
I love that. Let your weird out. Like, new motto right there. Love it. It's so fun. Because I'm
I
like, I'm such a little weirdo and I love being a
yeah,
little weirdo. So
me too. I think I spent so much of my life trying to hide it and trying to be like, I'm a cool girl. But like as I get older, I'm just like, oh, fuck it. I don't care anymore. Like this is who I am. And I love myself. Well, I'm starting to love myself. And, you know, like why not? Because the more true to me that I am, the more I'm gonna find the people who actually also care about me. And thankfully I have a pretty good group of people in my life. So that's been
yeah,
pretty easy.
authenticity goes a long way, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And that's why I loved like the concept of your podcast, the Thread and Therapy podcast that you just launched this year. So I'm real big into therapy and I advocate for it for everybody. I think everybody needs therapy, but which
Hmm.
is, you know, I'm here
It,
for it, but also kind of sad that we all need therapy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it would be nice if it was available
Mm,
to us all. Um,
yeah.
think it's necessarily sad, but I feel like, I mean, life and feelings, and whether you've gone through traumatizing events or not, um, just figuring stuff out.
Mhm.
It can be hard. Being in your own head can be
Yeah.
hard.
Mm,
And that's where I think therapy is really important. Um, but yeah, I started Thread in Therapy late January of this year, and I'm really enjoying it, and I think a lot of people are enjoying it too. So yeah, thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah. I've listened to a few episodes so far and I really, yeah, I just was like, yes, like preach it, girl. Like, kind of feeling like I wanted to be part of the conversation, but also just like it feels it feels real, which obviously is the point, right? And another point of connection of like, okay, someone else is experiencing these same feelings, or you don't have to feel alone. And that's, again, where that community aspect comes in is that feeling of
Mhm.
like belonging and belonging for just who you are, not because you are a certain way or tick certain boxes, but like just being able to show up and be you and be loved for that.
Well, and being like, being loved for all of you
Mhm.
too, not like your best self or the representative of yourself or whatever. And I feel like whether it's Instagram or just regular life, we all have to put up some sort of front.
Mhm.
Um, you could be having a shitty day, but you got to go pick up your kids and you run into the principal. You're not going to be like, I had a shitty day, principal. You're going to put on your best self
Right.
and whatever. But what I find interesting is, I mean, it's 2023 and there's still so much taboo and shame
Mhm.
with mental illness, with um taking pills, with even like anxiety, any of it, any of
Mhm.
it. And it's so common. It's so common. All of it is. All of it
Mhm.
is. And if you don't have some sort of condition of sorts, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
you probably know somebody that does, but yet not too many people are still talking about it. So,
Yeah.
and things like Instagram and social media really don't help that. I don't think, when everything's shiny, happy people all the time.
Mhm.
That can be, um, what's the word? Disillusioning,
Yeah.
And so, I felt like it's important to be like, no, this this is part of us too.
Mhm.
And um I'm finding it's a big reason why a lot of people quilt.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically what it's about, is like people's stories of why they quilt, and their struggles, and how quilting has helped them. And
Mhm.
it very much seems that most of us have a story.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And just the more we talk about it, the less stigmatized it becomes and the easier it becomes to recognize, those maybe those things in our own lives or yeah, in the people around us go, "Oh, I get it now." Because I think
Mhm.
when you're not in tune with your own self and the things that you're experiencing, it's really hard to understand like what other people are going through.
Yes.
And so I think that is really disconnecting when like if you can't even acknowledge that like you're exhibiting, you know, signs or behaviors of anxiety or depression or whatever it is, and how that's affecting you and the people around you, like how are you supposed to relate to other people or understand other people enough to make a deep connection? And that empathy that comes from that is humongous.
Well, what I've really found since starting thread and therapy is, um, how many people have connected with it, and that, I mean, that's what I hoped for.
Mhm.
But I've had people contact me. I've had people contact the guests in tears, and
Mhm.
saying, "This episode was me. I saw myself in this episode. I was just diagnosed, and I didn't know that other people felt like this, that this described me to a T, and I had no idea. I thought I was all alone in this."
Mhm.
Or, I've had that a few times where people have messaged me and said, "Thank you, because now I don't feel alone." And that's the point, because
Mhm.
you're
Yeah.
not, right?
Yeah.
And it's so much more common than people think, but you don't know it unless it's vocalized,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Exactly. And um my husband is actually in a master's program for counseling, and so he's, like, learning all this really great stuff, and we've both have been huge advocates for mental health, like, we've made that, like, a pillar in our relationship of, like,
mhm.
always striving for being our best version and accepting when we're not our best selves, and anyway, but one of the biggest things that I think has stuck out to him and to me is like in a lot of the readings and the research he's had to do so far, one of the things that stands out is community, is that, you know, therapy helps and if you have a strong community around you,
Yes.
just like expedites the healing process. And so, you know, they've done studies of like people who just did individual counseling and didn't really have a close-knit community versus somebody, who did the same amount of counseling, but also had a tight-knit community that supported them and
Mhm.
surrounded them. And that like those are the people who showed so much more growth and at a faster rate because they were also being held up in the times when they needed to be held up instead of trying to just do it on your own. Like I hate the phrase pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I could just scream every time I hear it because that's not how this works. Like, we need each other.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, talking about these things and saying, like, yeah, I am an anxious fucking person and I will climb the walls if I'm not careful. Like, I have to be so mindful, or here's my tips and tricks. And sometimes hearing that, you're just like, oh my God, I never realized I was doing that same exact thing.
Yeah.
And that connectedness, that togetherness is like really, I think, how we're as a society, we're going to get there. We're going to get better.
Yeah, we're humans, right? We
Hmm.
need connection. We
Yeah.
do. We need connection. And I don't know, that sounds really interesting, that study too. I'm not like, and don't get me wrong, like I am not qualified by any means. My only qualifications are that I used to be a hairdresser and I used to be a bartender.
I mean, right there.
So like I do not have any letters after my name or title or anything of the sort. Um, but I don't know. I kind of felt like this is something I had to do because
Yeah.
like you, I just feel like it's important. And so I just went for it, I
Yeah.
guess. Right.
Yeah. I mean, so this the same thing here. I was just like, I'm just gonna do this thing and hopefully it works. And, you know, I think again, back to like niching in, if you've niched into the thing that you want to talk about, that's how you find your community. That's how you find the people who
Yeah.
want to be in your community. And so I think that was really smart of you. And I think it's necessary to get out there and talk about it more. And I definitely am trying here as well, like, because it's super important to me too. Like,
Mhm.
so then when I find other people that are like quilting and mental health, I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Well, and it's like it's a hard and scary thing
Hmm.
to put yourself out there like
Yes.
that. To say um out to the world like this is I have depression or I have this or even just I'm struggling.
Hmm.
It's hard to admit that to yourself sometimes. It's certainly hard to put it out there. Um
Hmm.
but I've never yet seen a time where people do that and um it's been regretful. You know what I mean? Like even
Hmm.
if you're talking to your friend or your husband or I don't know, your bartender.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Just saying it and getting it off your chest,
Hmm.
even if you have to put it in a diary, it helps. It
Hmm.
helps, right?
Really does. Yeah. I don't know how, if you're familiar with Brene Brown, but
Mhm.
I read her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, when I was 30. And because when I turned 30, I thought my life was over. I like had a midlife crisis. I don't know what it was, but anyway, so I was like reading her book and just trying to like figure out what my life was even like,
Mhm.
gonna be. And so like having those connections and people around you, or even like journaling or writing in a diary, like putting words to your shame or your feelings takes the power away from them and gives
Yeah.
you control over them. And so I always talk about like shining a light in the dark corners of who you are. And that was like a big kind of theme in therapy for me, was like, let's dig around in that closet that you've had locked forever. Like, what are the boxes holding that are in that closet? And I'm like, I don't want to look in there. But I
Mhm.
found my inner child in there.
Mhm.
And like, so just that whole concept of like bringing everything out into the light, whether it's with a close trusted friend or a therapist, or, it doesn't even have to be somebody in person. If you've made that connection with somebody online, like if you've got that outlet,
Yeah.
it helps take away the power of that shame of having those feelings. And it's okay because you're not alone. Lots of people feel that way sometimes. And that's, you got to find those connections and shed the light on those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like that analogy of shining the light on it. It makes me kind of think of like, um, this is terrible.
No.
But like, I don't know. Sometimes if you, for me, I always forget about potatoes. I buy
Oh.
potatoes and then I forget about them. They're like in the dark corner of my pantry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the time I find them, they're rather disturbing
Uh-huh.
looking
Mhm.
because they've just grown and festered
Mhm.
in the dark there. But if I had taken them out, like you get
Yeah.
where I'm going with this,
Yeah.
but I don't know, just such a silly little thing. See, I
No.
told you I was the weirdo.
No, but that's exactly it though. It's like you leave it in the dark corner, and I also forget about potatoes because I'm like, what am I gonna make with those? And then I'm like, I'll figure it out next time. And then
Next,
until they're rotten. Um
I'm not the only one.
no, no. But yeah, it's very similar because if you let it sit in the dark, it festers and it takes on a life of its own. Where if you just speak it out loud, say, I'm really feeling shameful about this thing, then somebody can go, well, okay, like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah,
And or but what's the best that can happen? Just somebody to kind of talk you through that, or even just talking it through with yourself and journaling it. It's like seeing it on paper, you're like, wow, okay, like I can move on now. And
yeah,
sometimes things take longer to work through, but just getting into that practice of getting it out into the light.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah. Ugh. Like, feel like I gotta take a breath. No.
Just do your box breathing, babe. It's all good. Do your
Yeah, yeah, like
thing.
very familiar with breathing exercises. No, I did a cold plunge for the first time
Oh my God.
um on Monday with my husband, and again we went over to the pond across the street. It's freezing fucking cold. And I wanted to kill him a little bit, but I was like, I guess this is the next stage of like dealing with myself. Putting myself in uncomfortable situations on purpose to try to work through them is like, I don't wanna, but I'm gonna.
Oh my gosh. I want to work out all this stuff, but I do not want to go in cold water. Like
I
you,
mean,
I
I
don't even
don't
want to go in like a pool 9 out of 10 times. I'm just not, but you did it. Good for you. I don't.
it was awful. It was so bad. It was so bad. But he does it like every Monday morning
Wow.
and then just like takes cold showers throughout the week. And I'm just like, "Ugh, fine, I guess I can." I mean, there's so many health benefits to it if you do it right. And anyway, I'm just like, fine for my stupid mental health, I guess.
Oh, that's funny. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think like I just could never do that. Like I have taken pills for my mental health. I've seen a therapist for my mental health. I've talked in groups. I've had
Mhm.
confidants. I've done all sorts of things, but I don't think I could ever see myself plunging into cold water. That's where I draw the line.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. It's hard, but anyway, yeah, I just thought that was so funny. I'm like, I was screaming. I screamed. I got in the
I
water and I
bet.
screamed because it was so cold. But anyway. Uh, um, okay, I do want to rewind a tiny bit and talk
Hmm.
about more of your design process. So like, do you find when you're planning a quilt or when you're like if you're writing the pattern, is there like does that feel therapeutic to you, or do you find
Mm.
any part of that process that's kind of like you can get into the flow and it feels like, a therapeutic
Oh,
thing?
yeah. I mean, like, what is that referred? Like your zone of genius, like where
Mm,
you're in the flow.
yeah.
I think like that can happen in all different stages, really. For me, I like to design and create and play, that's where I have, I think, the most fun.
Mhm.
Um, and sort of seeing it come together and what have you. That can also be just as frustrating at times, you know,
Sure.
if I have an idea in my head, it's not quite being executed.
Mhm.
Um, but even like writing the pattern itself, if I get into the groove and you're getting any kind of momentum and groove and flow, is a
Mhm.
wonderful place to be regardless of what you're doing. Um, you know, so yeah, it doesn't happen all the time, but it's always welcome and amazing whenever it does, you
Mhm.
know. So um but I what do I do for design? I will draw on graph paper, I will work in EQ8, I'll work in Adobe. I write all my patterns in Adobe Illustrator. Um and that's, yeah, that's pretty much it for that.
Yeah. I know. I'm just always curious about, because some people have so many different ways like of approaching, how they design, and it's like, it can be very regimented because that's their way, or it can just be spur of the moment kind of thing. So
I
I don't
think
know.
I'm more like, I tried doing the Susie Quilts way, and
Sure.
I'm going to try that again.
Hmm.
I did come up with uh, actually 5 designs um, by the end of last year to work towards for this year coming. Um, I just didn't write the patterns all like I
Yeah.
had planned. Right.
Yeah.
So I do like that sort of concept of idea and that discipline.
Hmm.
I've wanted to be one of those people that are like, I'm gonna sketch every night, or I'm going to um do some sort of layout every Sunday. There's a woman that I follow on Instagram, and she does a Sunday sketch, and they're like remarkable every
Hmm.
week, remarkable. And I'm just like, how do you do it? Well, she does it because she's in constant flow. She has the discipline to work on her creativity all the time. And I've
Hmm.
always wanted to be one of those people, but I'm not one of those people. So and
Yeah.
it's hard too. I mean, like, I've got kids that they're 6 and 8.
Mm.
um my husband has his own business as well, so like there's life that
Hmm.
often
Yeah.
comes into play too, right? But there's definite goals of more disciplined creativity, but for the most part I do not function like that.
Yeah. It's tricky for me too. So that's why I'm always curious, like, how disciplined are these people? Really,
Right.
truly behind the scenes. Like, are they scatter like me? Or, it's not that I'm a pattern designer by any means, but I guess like just my workflow, I have to make a mess before I can find the path forward in through that chaos to create something. But man, it's a lot. And especially like as a mom, you only have limited day time during the
Hmm.
day while the kids are at school, and you're not having to like cater to their every need.
Right. If
Mom,
I
look at this.
had,
Mom, look at this.
mom, I want a snack.
Yeah, right? Yeah, you're like, "Go get one."
Oh my goodness.
You have
Yeah.
hands? No.
I have 2 boys that are having growth spurts right now. So both my kids are now just, I swear it's every couple minutes. Mom, I need a snack. Mom, I need a snack. You just ate dinner. Mom, I need a snack.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't
Ah,
it doesn't stop. I mean, I can
no.
attest to that. I've got 2 boys also, and my gosh. I'm like, "Are you done eating?" "No, I'm still hungry."
How old
"Okay."
are they?
Oh, well, 21 and 18, so they're almost gone. But well, the oldest one is out, but the youngest one will graduate this year, so he'll be out soon. But yeah, it's just the food. I'm like, "Mm, okay." I'm excited
If
for.
I,
No, go
sorry.
ahead. No, you're go ahead.
if I'm like honest to God, because I like my other hobby, I would say was probably thrifting.
Mm.
But if I'm not working, if I'm not doing stuff at home, I'm at the grocery store. Like that's where I'm at. Right. I don't have
Yeah.
time to go thrifting anymore. It's like I'm at the grocery store getting all the food I can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, since our youngest has a job, like he doesn't really eat at home much anymore, which is like, I mean, he's 18, he's got a job. Like, what am I gonna do? Be like, be home
Mhm.
at 9 p.m. But so that's definitely, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, like we don't have to buy as much stuff. Like he'll still scrounge around at midnight. I come down, I'm like, why is there a mess in the kitchen? I'm like, oh, because he came down and made quesadillas in the middle of the night, or it's like, what are you doing? But yeah, it's definitely like I don't envy people with more kids because two felt like a lot sometimes. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm one of four. So, and it was like my one brother and I were only a year apart. So we were like hitting similar growth spurts at the same times and just like eating them out of house and home. And then my youngest brother and my sister are much younger than me. They're 10 and 15 years younger than I am. So then it
Oh
was
wow.
like as she was like my mom was trying to like feed teenagers, she was also then having to feed like a toddler and a baby. And we're like, sorry, I don't know what to do for you. We're
Oh my
hungry.
goodness. Yeah.
But
My goodness. I hope
anyway,
she had a garden to
yeah.
to have or something.
Yeah, we always had a garden, which was fun. So that was like, then we go eat all the fresh produce before it can make it in the house. And,
Mhm.
you know, it's
I
fun though.
wish I could garden. I tried having a garden like the first year of lockdown, and I had
Mhm.
this wonderful fantasy of that I was going to have this beautiful garden and be plentiful and all the things. But what I quickly realized was that I liked planting it and putting it there, but then I wanted to be done.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, you have to weed it and, you know, do other stuff. So that was like
Mhm.
the first, I didn't have a garden for that long.
Yeah, it's hard. And like, I keep trying to grow squash for some reason. I'm like, oh, I'll grow this zucchini or oh, I'll grow this squash. And then we always get squash beetles, and I don't use chemicals on anything I grow. Like, I just refuse. And so I'm like, I don't know. I need to grow something else. And then I was like, I'll grow watermelons. And that took
Oh,
over my entire yard. I planted
yeah.
one plant, and our summer was like, it was like really cold until it was like 100 degrees. And so it was like too cold and then too hot. And then because it was too hot, they weren't growing. And so I was harvesting watermelon in like October because it finally was like
That's
cold
okay
enough for
though.
it to grow. I still have one. I don't know if it's rotten or not, but I was like, I need to pick smaller things because I keep picking things that take over, like one plant takes over
Yeah.
the entire garden space. And I'm like, huh, I don't know how to make this work.
Yeah. Honestly, like I tried so many different things. What I was remarkably successful at doing was growing corn.
Really?
Yeah, my first year, and we grew everything from seeds too. I was just like, what? Um,
That's awesome though.
but like you get the one hull and then it's done, and then you're left with these huge stalks and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna take them down and put them for Halloween decorations.
Yeah.
So it worked
Yeah.
out, but I was like, that was a lot of work for like 5 years of corn, you know? Like,
You're like, I could have
forget
gone to the
this.
grocery store. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been like so much cheaper to buy it from the grocery store. I mean, it was probably the best corn I had, but like still,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. It's just it's not for me. Gardening
Um,
is not my thing. I love the idea of
mhm.
it. I very much admire people that like have these beautiful, big, successful gardens, and I
I
am not
know.
that person.
Yeah. Same. I'm just like, I don't, I don't know how to do this. Like I'm just even surprised I'm keeping houseplants alive. I'm like, I'm really good at like making stuff. I'm not good at growing stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I am with you. I have all my plants basically in one corner and I keep like a little spritzer bottle and I'm just
Mhm.
like, oh, here you go, guys.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Anything else? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Same. I'm
Be-
just like, good luck everything else because I'm not going to help you. I don't know how.
right. I totally feel this.
Oh man. Well, I've taken up enough of your time today, and I just want to thank you again for being on the show with me. I'm really like so happy and I'm excited about your podcast. And so I want everybody to go listen. It's Thread and Therapy. So is it just on one platform or can they get it on
Um,
multiple?
yeah, it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, Audible. I'm sure it's on a few others too. Those are the major ones. And there is a new episode out every other Tuesday.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I will put links for everything in the show notes so people can get to you easily. And yeah, otherwise, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun, Amanda. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.